Morning, Stu. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak to me on the Culture Corner podcast, mate. It's great to have you on board as a guest finally.
Yeah, it's taken a little bit of time, isn't it? We've been trying to plan this for a little while, and yeah, our diaries. We've been trying to do it in person, and that's always a challenge, isn't it? I think that's the thing. So we've succumbed to doing it online. But no, thanks for having me, Adrian. Really
No problem. Busy schedule, so we've just fit it in. But yeah, it's a great to have you on and your wisdom. So obviously we've been chatting for ages, but for anybody who is listening into this that doesn't know you, if you could just give us a brief overview of who you are, what you do, your leadership past, if you like.
Yeah. So hey everyone. So yeah, I'm Stu Day. I've been in the tech and quality industry for coming up to, I think it's 28 years this month, possibly next week, maybe, I don't know. So 28 years, and everybody, there's people going to be looking at this like they're watching it and going, he's not old enough. No, I am genuinely old enough. So 28 years, and a good proportion of that, probably half of that time, I've been in different types of leadership roles at different organizations and different levels, so to speak, but they've all been within the quality space. So that whether that be testing or more holistic quality. So I've been in the industry for 28 years. I recently joined a new company. By the time this goes out, I'll be working at 1010 consultancy. Nice. So slightly different type of role for me. So I'll be a managing principal consultant, but with a lens on internal focus to the organization and the people side of things. So helping develop people, helping develop community, and helping 1010, with all that sort of stuff from an internal point of view, which is the stuff I really love, to be honest. I love the people side of what we do. Tech's great, tech's interesting, there's always some really cool stuff happening, but nothing starts without people. That's how I look at it. So yeah, and we've also got a podcast ourselves, Quality Talks. You'll see the banner behind me. Been going now for just over a year. And we've also got a website, qualitytalks.co.uk, with loads of different content on there as well. So anybody interested, give us a follow. We'll check it out.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that, Stu. I'll ask you first of all about your journey into tech. I always kick off with that because there's the traditional routes and non-traditional routes, so it's always good to find out how people started. So, give us a quick flavour of your route.
Yeah, mine was definitely probably the I don't know. Some people might say it is actually the traditional route. I don't know, but back when I was a lad, it was. But and we were talking about this just before we hit the record button, that my daughter's just started secondary school. My son is doing his second year of sixth form now. And the big thing for me is that they have fun learning. They enjoy education and stuff like that. I didn't enjoy education when I was younger. The environment I was in, the school, etc. It just wasn't a fun environment to be in. So I left school and I went to sixth form at the time, but I only managed to do a year. I was just like, I just can't do it. I can't do education in this way anymore. So I left sixth form after a year. And for those that maybe were around in the sort of mid to late 90s and all about the youth training schemes, YTS. I joined basically a youth training scheme. It's called the Prospect Scheme at the time, which was 4 days working, 1 day in education, like in college. And that was actually my first step into IT, because I was a systems trainee at Whitbread, based in Luton. And that gave me my first sort of insight into, sort of some of the more technical side of things, and that and the other. After a year, unfortunately, they had to let me and the other person doing the scheme go. It was more a case that they didn't have the capacity to keep us on and commit to the training and stuff. And that's where things got a little bit interesting for me, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm really confused now. I just needed money. So I was doing some part-time work and factory work and all this sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, I was looking through the newspaper one day. Newspaper, people, we're talking newspaper, right?
Showing your age there, yeah.
Showing my age. We had job adverts in newspapers. And I saw this role for a UAT analyst. So user acceptance testing analyst. Bit of a mouthful. But I knew I really liked tech. I knew I was a bit of a techie sort of thing, growing up, and I really enjoyed the technical side of things, and I got a taste for that in when I was on that scheme. So I applied for the role. It sounded really interesting. Didn't really know what it was, if I'm honest. I was just like, I haven't got a clue. So applied for the role, had the interview. And for those that know me back then and interviewed me, I winged the interview, people. It was like I didn't really know what I was saying, what I was doing. It was probably the first proper interview I'd ever really had as well. But I got offered the role, and initially it was a fixed term contract for a year. I ended up staying at that company for over 10 years, I think it was.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, actually, probably more than that. So it was my real sort of step into tech was that role, and everything I learned was learned on the job. The people that were around me were brilliant. The software engineering manager I had at the time was superb. She had so much knowledge. She was just like one of those people that you just enjoyed talking to, because she would just share everything, And it all just started from there, really. And like 28 years later, I'm still going.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, it's good. It's good. You just need an opportunity. A lot of the time, you just need an opportunity, don't you? And I think
you do. Yeah.
As a senior leader, as somebody that's hired for donkey's years and still will hire in the future, are you glad that the tech market seems to have come full circle like that with regards to hiring? Because you remember we went through a time. I don't know whether it was with the same with yourself, but in certain industries, certain sectors, it was. You need to come from a red brick university. You need to have a 2-1 or a first. You need to have like blah blah blah. And now we're starting to see, thankfully, the degree apprenticeships, the opportunities for school leavers and things like that. It seems there's a real push. People are making a real push and an effort to try and attract people from diverse backgrounds into the industry.
Yeah, I am really pleased to see it, and it's something that I've been a massive advocate for many years, and I've tried to sort of enable it within some of the organisations that I've worked in, whether that be through third parties like 1010, who I'm going to be a part of, or others that kind of offer a similar sort of like academy type approach. In my recent role at Capital One, we actually spun up our own academy to try and and the idea of that was to ultimately in the future enable people from different backgrounds across the company, or career switches or anything like that, to get the training they'd need to then create a build a role within the quality space. But it's I still think there's a lot more that can be done, because even with a lot of the academies, they're still looking for grads. They're still looking for, it might not be a STEM background, but it's still a graduate background. And there's so much talent out there that, is available to people that we're not just tapping into. The apprenticeship route is great, but then I'm not entirely sure on the numbers around how many organizations take on the apprenticeships. I know it's grown. I know that there are a lot that do now, but I think from a tech perspective, there's so much more we could do, so much more opportunity out there to tap into the skills and the talent that's out there that I think we're missing out.
Yeah, I'd agree. More often than not, the hiring process is for somebody who's got experience, isn't it? Still the go-to. I had somebody on the podcast, a guy that I know well, Clem Pickering. He used to be at at a consultancy called Infinity Works, and when they ran their own grad schemes, the apprenticeship schemes. And he was talking to me about the background of people that were on it, and he was like, "We had a barista in there, we had a school teacher, we had a bloke who worked on the oil rigs, and you have to have that level of obviously capability." But we were just open to so many different backgrounds, and I think that it really gives you that diversity, doesn't it? That companies need.
It does. It's more about the aptitude than, do you know what I mean? Because you could have 5 years experience in the tech world, but still have very limited skills, or very, as an individual, you might be limited from a talent perspective. You may not have the drive, you may not have the aptitude, whereas you'll get somebody from a completely different background. And we see this a lot in the quality space, in the software testing space, that actually it's the non-technical people from the non-technical backgrounds that make the best software testers and quality professionals, because often it's about the inquisitive nature, the curiosity, the critical thinking, those sort of things that you can't teach, right? They're just part of what you do. I've had people from historian backgrounds, and that's why I love the quality space, or in the software testing space, and why I've stayed in it for so long, because you can attract that different type of talent, and from those different types of backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to ask you about this later on, but I know in one of your podcasts, but as we're on the topic, I know one of your podcasts, you discussed the unicorn candidates in the job adverts. And what's your thoughts around that?
I'm going to use the word, I think it's lazy. I think the issue we have with a lot of the job adverts that go out is that people don't actually put the time in to really understand what they need. And it feels like it's just like, we'll just blanket out a profile, and we'll try and hit on as many of these things as we possibly can with candidates, and then we'll figure it out from there. But what that does is it puts people off, right? And especially in a space where there's a lot more AI involved in maybe reviewing CVs and reviewing candidates in that first round of cuts, you need to be very, very clear on what it is you need. And I'm all for people having a lot of strings to their bows, and we're talking a lot more at the moment about generalists rather than specialists in the industry, and you'll see that more and more, that people are able to turn their hand to many different things now. But when you're advertising for a role, you need to be very clear on what is it you really need, rather than just banging down all these buzzwords into a role profile or a role description, and just sort of almost hitting the lottery as to, we may get somebody that hits all this criteria, but the likelihood is you're not. And actually what you're going to do is you're going to put people off from applying in the first place. So be very clear on what it is you really need, and take that time up front to say, what do we need from this role that we're going to recruit for? How does it supplement the team that we've already got in place? What are the skills that we may be missing that this role could, complement and contribute to, and then build from there. But yeah, the unicorn thing is, yeah. And for anybody that doesn't understand why we call it a unicorn, because unicorns don't exist, right? Yeah. So if you go looking for a unicorn, you're not going to find one, much to my daughter's disgust, probably. But yeah, that's why we call it a unicorn candidate.
Quite often the request for a unicorn candidate comes with a below average salary as well.
Yes.
We want one of these, but actually we're not in a pay market rate. We'll pay below. But it's I was going to say, I think with the whole list that some managers come up with, is it due to not understanding fully exactly what you're looking for, within the role, and trying to work it out as you go?
Yeah, I think it is, and I appreciate how busy people are, and often taking time up front to really understand your teams and where the direction you need to go and the skill sets that you may be missing and stuff like that. It takes time, it does, but if you really want the best candidates and you want people to join your organization that are, going to hit the ground running, from almost, I'm going to use the term plug and play. I don't mean plug and play from they'll know everything about your organization, but the skills that you need, they'll have.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm talking about the skills you need rather than necessarily the skills you want. There's a big difference between need and want. So being very precise on what it is you need and understanding that can actually benefit you way more when those candidates land, rather than maybe getting a generalist that can do a bit of everything. But actually, then you find out the skills that you really need. Maybe they're not as experienced and as strong with those things that maybe another person would have been if you'd have just taken that time to understand the need versus the want.
Yeah, exactly. And you touched on it before about where does the person fit into the team? You don't need another. You don't need another agent with another skills. It's like taking time to understand, what skill set or what area we're missing in, and let's plug somebody into that rather than trying to rinse and repeat with the same skills.
Yeah, I look at teams as a jigsaw puzzle, right? If you've got my mum loves jigsaw puzzles. You open her wardrobe, she's got so many jigsaw puzzles. She won't listen to this, but if she did, I'm having a go at her right now. She's got so many jigsaw puzzles, but you buy a jigsaw puzzle and you look at the picture on the box, and that's what you buy it for, right? You buy it to look at that and go, that's really nice. You open it up and throw all the bits out. You go, oh my god, look at the mess. Right. But those pieces fit together in a certain way to create that picture, that end result. And that's why I look at teams being, right? Every person in that team needs to connect and supplement each other with the right skills needed to produce the end result that you want from your team. It doesn't mean that you need to have people that can do everything. What you want, ideally, in my experience, is the concept of the T-shaped person. So you've got somebody that's very skilled in a certain area, but they have a breadth of skill across other disciplines and stuff like that can, supplement and can support. Should, say, somebody goes on holiday, okay, I can step in for a little bit and help, but it's not my speciality, right? Versus somebody will go, I can't do anything there. Sorry, you want somebody that can help, but you still want those specialisms as well.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard that before. I suppose in software engineering, you say a polyglot developer, wouldn't you, or a T-shaped developer? You don't want somebody in that silo who say, "Well, that's outside my remit. I can't, like you said, I can't help there."
Yeah, so, correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we'll get off this now, but I think that it could be a whole different podcast, isn't it? But you think about the wants on a job spec and the way that it excludes certain people. When you look at inclusivity, the wording on the job spec, I don't know the stats, so forgive me, anyone listening to this, but they say, if a female looks at a job spec and they don't tick X number of boxes, then they won't apply for it. Whereas a male will just apply for it anyway. You need to be making your roles more accessible to the wider group, really.
And just on that point, Adrian, it's even though a male may apply for it, think about the noise that creates, right? Because even then they're still uncertain, right? Even if they don't have all the skills, they're applying on a whim, they're applying on a hope. But actually, if that role doesn't necessarily need all those skills, you're getting loads of people applying just on a hope versus the necessary, like, oh, I know that I fit this mold because these are actually the skills that you need, versus this whole list of random stuff that maybe you don't. So it has an impact either way, and the psychological impact on the female side of female applicants of not wanting to apply because they don't have those skills, I think is a really important one, because then, especially in the tech space, we want more females into tech. We're putting a blocker straight away. So we need to take more time up front. We need to make sure that the roles that we're advertising for are genuinely the things that we need, but also have a think about, okay, so maybe some people might not have the skills now or the level of skill you need, but that doesn't mean they can't have it in 6 months' time, right? How are you going to develop that person and actually taking the time to do that? Because again, we miss out on a lot of talent because companies aren't able to or willing to develop people. They want the skills there and then versus, maybe developing somebody over a few months. So
absolutely. I think you can teach people the technical skills. You perhaps can't teach them the behaviours and the values and that kind of thing that you want with
it's much harder. Yeah, it's much harder to influence and change behaviours and values, which is why culture is so hard, right? So, so anything that's focused on people is hard, but if you can bring that in from day one and then teach them the other skills, amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll flip it. You mentioned culture, so we'll flip it back onto the topic of the podcast. I was going to ask you just to kick it off. You hear a lot of people talk about, I work for a company with a great culture. Company X and Y has got a great culture. What's great culture to you, Stu?
So I think this is always a really interesting question, and I do a lot of, in my workshops, I talk a lot about culture, and trying to help people understand what culture really means.
Yeah.
Because I could say to you, Adrian, what's the culture like where you work? And you'll be like, oh, it's great. Yeah, I really enjoy it, and this, that, and the other. But what the response should actually be is, well, Stu, what does good culture look like to you? And then I can answer the question about it for you rather than for me, because our opinions will vary, right? Our values vary. So for me, what good and great culture look like is, it's all about the people side. It's all about empowerment. It's all about autonomy, but autonomy and empowerment without support is not a good place to be. So as leaders, if we go, oh yeah, I empower you to do this, you have the autonomy to do that, but then I step back and I don't actually support you or give you the tools or the means to actually achieve what it is, that's not good either, right? So just being empowered doesn't mean that you're going to succeed. As a leader, you need to empower and then support and guide. And, so for me, what a great culture is from top down is having that type of leadership in place where people are valued, people are invested in, people are given that autonomy, they're given that empowerment, they're trusted. And it isn't just words on a wall or words in a pamphlet. It's actually the behaviors that people exhibit on a day-to-day basis show that exact culture, right? But it's one that is where support is there when needed. That doesn't mean that you're micromanaged. That's like it's more about if I need support from somebody, I know I can go to that person and they'll happily support me. But they're going to give me the autonomy to try some things. They're going to give me the space to fail and maybe make mistakes, but they're going to be there to pick me back up, right? And I've always said to my teams that, I'm empowering you, I'm giving you the autonomy, but that doesn't void me of any accountability, right? Yeah. I'm still accountable. Therefore, if you fail, it's on me. It's not on you, right? I will face into the after effects of what happens if we have something go wrong. That's on me because I've empowered you, right? Obviously you have to take your own responsibility and your own accountability, and this is for me where I think teams themselves can really drive a really powerful culture where they all take responsibility but they all hold each other accountable as well, and just drive that culture where they're all supporting each other, but that comes through the leadership, right? And seeing that at the start from leadership.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I think you'll know a lot better than me. This is why you're on the podcast. But if you get to a point where your teams, the individuals within your team are holding each other accountable for their actions, as opposed to you, do you think that's when you've really, not you holding them accountable, do you think that's when you've really nailed it? You've got that high performing team with a strong culture.
Yeah, I do. And I think you've got to, obviously you've got to get them to that place where they feel comfortable doing that and laying those foundations. And, we talk a lot about psychological safety, well, that's got to be within the team. You've got to build that within the team. So if you've got a number of different teams, so say, for example, I'm a senior leader and, I've got a number of managers and leaders that line into me, but they oversee teams. You've got to make sure you've got that consistency of approach, that consistency of values, that consistency of behaviors across the teams. And that's where that becomes quite difficult, because you'll have, everybody's unique. Every individual is unique. So even within a team, you'll have a real uniqueness. So if you can get to a place where everybody understands that they're responsible, but everybody then feels comfortable holding each other to account, having open conversations, but then also offering each other the support they need, not just blaming, right? Yeah, oh, that was on you, that's on you. I'm holding you accountable, that's on you. No, holding somebody to account isn't blaming somebody. Holding each other to account is, we need to work through this together. How can we best support each other? And we will have to contribute and do our bit to make this team succeed.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think that's possibly one of the biggest challenges in leadership, to get people who maybe haven't worked previously in environments where they've had that trust, where they've been able to confidently challenge without, being hauled over the coals? They've got that psychological safety environment. Is that, to get people used to that and understand that and comfortable in that environment, is that one of the biggest, is that a serious challenge as a leader, do you think?
Trust in general, right? Building trust. If you ask somebody, what does trust mean to you? Again, it'll be a different answer for different people. Trust, as a leader, you've got to earn trust. You've got to earn respect, right? If I've got a team of people, I will automatically give them my trust. They will automatically have my respect, but I wouldn't expect that back. I need to earn that, right? And that's something I've always been very open with my teams. Like, from day one, I will trust you unless you give me a reason not to.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And if you give me a reason not to, then you've got to earn it back. And then that becomes more difficult. But from day one, I will always say to them that I have to earn your trust. Right. So what are the things that you need to see from me to help earn your trust, earn your respect, and then we can build from there. And you've said it there, that like, people come from different backgrounds, and in some people, in their previous experience, they may have been, held over the fire for even making a comment about something in a meeting, right? I've seen it. I've seen somebody be blasted down before, in years gone by, where they've made a comment in a meeting and basically been told, don't interrupt, don't, Wow. So if you think somebody comes from that type of background, and then they come into a space where we're telling you it's safe is not good enough. You've got to feel like it's safe, right? So just for me, being in a room with people and saying to everybody, it's okay, everybody, this is a safe space, isn't enough. And if I'm having to tell you it's a safe space, chances are you don't feel like it is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That is a really good point. I think you mentioned something there that which will be quite useful. I've picked it up myself just then, and I'm going to use it. It's such a shoe, so I'm going to nick that. It's when you said, one of my questions was going to be, how do you create trust? With your teams, you drop into a new team or you get some new people. How do you create trust? But you've mentioned something that I've not heard of before, where you say to me, what do I need to do to earn your trust, to get you? So you're getting people to give you that feedback and say, well, rather than you thinking, what strategy do I need? What do my team need from me to earn the trust?
Yeah, well, that's it. And again, if you're coming into a new organization, you've got new teams, you don't know what their previous leadership was like, right? You don't know whether they've got their guard up. You don't know whether they're on the defensive. You don't know, so for them to be able to share with you what it is I need to do, to build their trust and enable that trust to happen, is really powerful. And it also shows a level of vulnerability from a leadership perspective, because I'm coming in there saying, I don't have the answers, right? I don't have the answers from day one because I don't actually know what's happened in the past. So let's talk about it. Let's get that out in the open, and I will do everything I can to do those things and build that trust. And but likewise, obviously, as I said, I trust everybody from day one, but you've got to maintain that. You can't take it for granted, and you've got to continue to maintain that trust. And if you break it in any way, you lose it. You've got to work very hard to get it back.
Yeah. So yeah, which is fair enough. That's a really good stance. I think there's because you've been a senior leader in a lot of well known organisations. So you've been in there, you've walked into something, and they're not greenfield, businesses or scale ups from the start. So you've gone into someone else's environment. This would probably help up and coming leaders or some people in your peer group as well. Do you have a way of, when you land, assessing or assessing the culture? How do I, assessing what you walked into, and then do you have a go-to kit where you like, right, okay, this is what I do to assess the culture. This is what I would do to, start to help that, evolve or change or improve or enhance it, whatever it may be.
Well, the first thing I do is get a list of people that I need to speak to, right? And that isn't just like peers and leaders above me. It's like across the board. Who are the people that I feel like I need to? Well, who are the people from day one that obviously they'd be telling me I need to speak to, but then I would build that out from there, right? And and building those relationships from day one is really important. And it can just be, let's go grab a coffee. Let's have a chat for 15 minutes. I'm not talking about work. Let's just get to know each other. And, and then you can kind of build from there. And you can pick up a lot from just general conversation with people. But again, when you first start in an organization, people don't necessarily know who you are. So they may not be as honest and open and transparent with you as they might be from 3, 6, 9 months in, right? Once they know who you are and what you're about. Yeah. So the sooner you can start building that rapport and really getting building a good relationship with as many people as possible that can give you a genuine insight to the culture, the better. The other thing is to spend time with different teams, right? Just spend time sitting with teams, in teams, shadowing what they do on a day-to-day basis. And for no other reason than just to learn, right? It's not about going and sitting with that team and then off the back of that going, oh, you need to improve X, Y, and Z. No, it's just about gathering information and having, and talking to the teams as a whole. There's other sort of techniques that I use as well. So I've got this model, which is the zone model, which I developed as part of a barefoot coaching program I was on a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And it's a really simple model. It's just like it's basically a target. You've got and 3 different zones. One is comfort zone, one is stretch, and one is danger. And you can use that to really drive really good conversations just through questioning to say, as a team, do you feel you've spent most of your time over the last 12 months? And some people might put it in danger zone. Some people might put their name in stretch zone. And then you can start having conversations, and that helps you then gather more information. Okay, so you've been in the danger zone for most of the 12 months. That's not great to hear. Let's talk about why that might be. So using little techniques like that can help drive conversation. But for me, it's very much about building those relationships initially. And I know it's a bit cliche because everybody says you've got to build relationships. You do, but it's about doing it in a way that you don't really have an opinion, right? You're keeping your opinion very restrained and making sure that you're not coming with any bias at all. It's very easy to come into a new organization and talk to somebody and go, "Oh, that doesn't sound good." Why? But you don't have the context. So it's about context gathering as well. So
I suppose context gathering, being humble, and I suppose it's what's the word I'm looking for? I suppose as an individual, having the emotional intelligence to keep yourself calm, a bit like what you were saying there. If you're told, oh, that's not very good, right? Okay, I need to go and deal with that, and just think, hang on, whoa, I've spoke to one person. Let's just continue the process and then get a real understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, and it's been even more important for me in my type of role as, you know, in head of quality roles, for example, because quality is holistic in the tech space. So whilst we have specialists, you know, we have quality professionals, software testers, they're not the only people that contribute to the overall quality of what we ultimately deliver to our customers. So for me, coming into this type of role, I can't just make my decisions and build my strategy based on what the quality professionals are saying. No, I need to speak with the software engineers. I need to speak with the architects. I need to speak with the product owners. I need to speak with the business analysts. I need to speak with the different software engineering managers, the heads of different disciplines, the directors, the CTO that, you know, and also don't forget our operations team that have to support the products that we put out there, and our, you know, so that's for me is the hard part. It's building those connections and networking and getting a view from so many different places to then be able to build a vision, build a strategy that, you know, enables everybody.
Yeah, it's dealing with all that data, isn't it? And there'll be so many different viewpoints and opinions across that whole piece, won't there? I think I was going to say, what was your, as an experienced leader, what has been or is your biggest challenge, and how have you tried to overcome that, or how have you overcome that? And you may have referenced a couple of things there, but is there something in particular?
I think that there's a couple. First of all, scale. Right. So you know, I've been in some large organisations. Obviously, my most recent role in Capital One, the scale was huge, right? You know, we had many teams. We had different verticals, different number of directors. So the scale of people and scale of teams is a genuine challenge that sometimes is very difficult to overcome, because, you know, if you don't have a view on what the structure of all those teams look like, what the makeup, what the skills are, etc., it becomes quite difficult to then say, well, where do we need to provide support, or where do we need to provide coaching or training, or, you know, we can come up with a vision, we can come up with a strategy, but ultimately that's then got to cascade through and flow through our teams. And in a role such as head of, you know, I have to lead through others, you know, massively. And that won't always be leading through the people that might line into me. That will be also leading through and having really good relationships and allyships from other heads of, and, you know, other leaders in other disciplines. And that for me is always that biggest challenge, is how do you lead through people when you're one individual and you could be dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people, and you know you need to try and influence across the board. And the big thing there is how you build allyships, not just relationships, but true allyships that, you know, are able to support and drive and deliver the things that you're trying to do. And this is why building strategy and vision needs to be a collaborative thing. It can't be something you do in isolation for that reason.
Right. It sounds. So you're trying to take all these, you're leading through the individuals. So are you trying to take the individuals on the journey? I suppose you're trying to get them to you're building the trust with them. You're trying to take them on the journey, and you're trying to get them to buy into and be allies for what you're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you've got to remember that, you know, to be a great leader, you still need to be able to connect with as many people as possible. It doesn't just mean you're connecting with other leaders. You need to be able to connect with those the people that are in the teams, because, you know, and that's where community comes in. So building community of different types of community within organizations is another big enabler to being able to do those things that you're trying to do. I don't think people, unless people have been in the head of quality or a type of role, I don't think they often realize the scale at which we have to operate and the complexity at which we have to operate. Just by the very nature of, we're not just focusing on software testing, we're focusing on holistic quality and all the different pieces to that and the things that enable it or disrupt it from happening. So it is a challenging role. And it's one of the reasons why I'm wearing a hat for anybody that can't see. I've got no hair, right? And I've got a very grey and white beard. It's one of those reasons, but I love it. Absolutely love it.
Is that, have you cracked that? Have you got a plan to when you go into organisations to achieve that, or is it a constantly moving target for anybody who's listening thinking, do you know what, I am in that type of role, and I 100% buy into what Stu's saying. Have you got any sort of hints and tips, or is it really you're feeling it out? Every organisation is different to the next.
I think you have to keep an open mind and you have to feel it out a little bit anyway, because you can't just go with a cookie cutter approach regardless, because every organization is different. They've got different challenges, different tech stacks, different customers, all that kind of stuff. But there's things you can do that, allow you to start building some of those foundations, as I was speaking about earlier, building your network, getting a really good understanding of different individuals, different team makeups, how those teams, some of the history on those teams, is a really good starting point. But also you can do, just quality maturity assessments, so you can build out an assessment that you can go around every team and just ask them some questions, right? And, and it's, those questions can be, they will need to be relatively generic to start with, because you won't have all the context and the history and stuff like that. Yeah. So but you can do that in a way that it starts giving you information. And then you can start having the conversations with the people that say, we've done this with the teams, and I can go and speak to the head of engineering, for example, and we can talk about some context and some data about maybe why these things have been happening, or, and that's how you start building relationships and allyships, because ultimately I'm there to help the head of engineering improve what our teams are able to do as well, right? It's not just about him or her helping me, it's about me helping them as well. And that's really important. Allyships isn't just about what can you do for me, it's about what can I do for you and what can we do for each other. Yeah. So I think, anybody coming into this type of role, maybe for the first time, or maybe, even if you're not in the role for the first time, but you're joining a new organization, take that time to do that assessment of in some way. And there's different, as I say, there's different ways you can do it. But don't just go in there with from day one saying, this is what I'm going to do, as in, I know the problems already. You don't. You won't know the problems already. Some of them may turn out to be things you've dealt with before, but often, there's nuances to problems, but they'll always, a problem may exist, but ultimately that problem is a symptom of an underlying cause. What you need to understand is the underlying cause, not the problem.
Yeah, that's great. That's brilliant. Thanks for that insight, Stu. That's spot on. That'll definitely help people. I think this is just a loop into that. We've spoken in the past about, or one of the topics we discussed when we very first spoke was brand. Obviously, quality talks, quality tech talks, and Exalto and things we were talking about building personal brands. To be successful as a leader nowadays, especially in the larger organisations, how important is it for you to build a personal brand or have visibility or raise visibility of people within an organisation and teams?
I think it's massively important. I think there's the thing is, what you've got to remember is there's different ways to build a brand. You can build it from a selfish perspective, or you can build it from actually the brand that I really want to build is one that is helpful to others. And and I was asked this question I did the 7 Habits training a few months back, and we're talking about endings. Like, what would your ending be? If you were to tell a story about your life, what would your ending be? What would you want to leave with people? I.e., what your legacy would be, right?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting when you ask people that question, because, you know, that's very much about what your brand would then need to be, right, throughout that time, and ultimately what it is. And for me, you know, a brand isn't necessarily, we talk about it being a personal brand, but you've got to be mindful of, it's not just about you, it's about what you're able to do for others, especially from a leadership perspective. So your brand should be about, how do I help others, how do I enable others, you know. Okay, yeah, the spotlight's on me, as in, you know, this is me I'm talking about, but ultimately this is what my brand is about. It's not about I can do this and I can do that. It's about, I'm able to enable you in these ways, and so on and so on. But it's massively important. And I remember many years ago when I was at EasyJet, one of my manager at the time there, he said to me at the time, he said, "Stu, you should start working on your brand." And I was like, what does that even mean? And this was back in like 2013. And I had no clue. I just like, what are you on about? And here we are today, and it's one of the biggest things, right? It's, you know, brand's really important, but also, you know, when one of the things often gets missed is actually building internal brand, not from a personal perspective, but from a team perspective or a discipline perspective. And this is something that I worked on heavily at Dunelm when I was there, and at Capital One, was building the brand around quality. What does that brand look like? What is the identity? What can people connect into? And brand is very much about, how do you connect people to your brand, right? And that then enables you to get followers, it enables you to get customers, it enables people to be engaged. So it's just as important to think about how you build an internal brand from a team or discipline perspective as it is from a personal perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Showcasing what the team's about, isn't it? I suppose as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're right. I spoke to somebody the other day, and I was going to ask you as well. We were talking on one podcast. A guy called Mark. We were talking about managing up at a senior level. You know, not just managing your teams, but having to manage up. And he said it was only later on in his career, after a conversation with one of the C-suite, just saying like, certain people in the C-suite, they're not aware of you or what your team does. Yeah. And it was like light bulb moment about, right, it's not just about managing, you know, the teams or the people around me or below me. I need to manage up the ladder as well.
It absolutely is. And actually, you know, I look at it as being able to influence up, right? You can't influence people if people don't know who you are, right? And it kind of comes back to that. How well does this person know me? Why would they trust me to be influenced by me? Right. So being able to influence, you know, to more senior leadership, you've got to be visible. Visibility in a leadership role is the most important thing. You've got to be visible. You've got to be available as a leader. Yeah. You can't be one of these leaders that sits at their desk and hides behind their screen and expect things to just miraculously happen. No, that's not how it is. And I don't mean visibility from, I'm standing over somebody's shoulder looking at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. No, it's about being, you know, and it's not even about being the face. It's about being the voice and being the support for everybody else. So you're there, you're available to people when they need you. If they need support, you're there, you've got their backs. You're able to confidently talk about what the vision is, but that vision isn't just your vision, it's everybody's vision, because how you've gone about that, you've done it in a collaborative way and everybody's had input, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So being visible and available is huge as a leader, and that's the way you're then able to influence upwards. And, you know, like you say, if somebody up in the C-suite doesn't know who you are, maybe I need to be a bit more visible. Maybe I need to be doing a little bit more, but not just for me, but for the teams, right?
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, a good point you make there for the teams. There's a huge, for anybody listening as well. It's a good thing. You talk about, it's not me, it's the teams. It's about the people. It's like, you know, there can be no, for great leaders, there can be no ego, can it? It's not about. Yeah. it's not about them. It's about what can I do for other people. It's understanding people, getting to know them. I think one of the things that from our conversations that I know you're big on self-care. Self-care as a leader and vulnerability, and you really push that hard. So where's that come from? And for anyone listening, why self-care or showing the self-care is important as a leader, and the vulnerability piece, why is that so important?
I mean, it's so important because I've struggled since my late teens with anxiety. As I've moved through my years, my professional career, I've struggled with just keeping things in, not really being open and honest about how I'm doing and how I'm feeling, and not really realizing how much of an impact it was having on me through those years, right? And I don't want people to go through that. I don't want people to experience the same sort of feelings that I've experienced and the dark places that I've experienced over that time, just through not talking.
Yeah.
Right. Just through thinking that I needed to keep it in. My view on leadership. I've always been, on the outside, I've always been a fun-loving, jokey, need to have fun type of person. But inwardly, I would be in pain, right? And in my brain, I would be in pain, and in some pretty dark places because I was just taking on so much.
Yeah.
Right. I would always look at, I need to protect my teams. I need to take it on my shoulders. And that's the true strength of leadership, me being able to take it on my shoulders and protect my team. And to some degree, yes. Right. But there's different ways you can approach that. And if you're not able to look after yourself, then ultimately you can't look after your teams. Right. It's like if, having kids, as a parent, if you're not looking after yourself, then you're not going to be able to look after your children, right? Yeah. If your own health is suffering, ultimately it's going to impact your children in some ways. And it's the same thing from a team perspective and individuals. But also being vulnerable about that enables others to realize it's actually okay. And for anybody obviously that isn't watching this on video, my cap is a prime example of, a statement that it's okay not to be okay, right? And it is really important to help people understand that even though they look at me as a senior leader, I have my challenges, I have my vulnerabilities. I struggle. My struggles on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, but that's okay, right? And I'm going to be open and honest about it with you, right? If you want to ask me about it, come and speak to me about it. But I will always I'll be much more open with people about that. And I think that it's one thing to be able to do it and enable and support your teams and give your teams that comfort of, if Stu's being vulnerable, then I feel like I can. But when you are talking about your peers as well, so the other senior leaders, and giving them the same support is just as important, because often it's those people in those roles that are really the ones that are suffering and not talking about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And rather than making a big announcement about anything, do you just slowly just drop it into conversations as you're speaking to people? You're constantly sharing that vulnerability.
Yeah, and I think it's what I'll often do is, and this is one way that I like to try and earn trust, is I'll go first. Right. If we're in a room and we're talking and we're sharing stuff and we're trying to get to know each other, I'll go first. Not because I want to go first, but I want to create that comfort for people that, if I'm sharing a personal story or a personal event or times when I've struggled, hopefully somebody else might then feel comfortable with doing the same. They don't have to, but at least they know that, the person that's in their leader, so to speak, is open to doing that, and at some point hopefully they would feel as comfortable to do it. So it's giving people the encouragement, but also, like you talked about, self-awareness earlier. I am more self-aware than ever about when I may be on in a troublesome time mentally or whatever, because I start to know my triggers, and being self-aware of my triggers are what's key. So, for example, something that may not normally wind me up, all of a sudden winds me up. What? Why? Why has that just? Do
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
because
yeah.
of all these other things that are happening that maybe I'm just packaging away, and that one little thing that would normally just be okay, cool, whatever, has tipped me over the edge. And we talk about
Yeah,
stress bucket and stuff like that, but
yeah,
yeah, I don't think in leadership we talk about it enough. We don't train leaders around self-care enough. We do things like mental health, first aider training and stuff like that. And how do we look after others? And actually, it's a really good training to do if you are a leader, because it does talk about self-care and it does talk about how you need to look after yourselves as well. But generally, as organizations, I don't think we do enough leadership training that is focused on being able to self-care and support each other
yeah.
in that way. So I think that there's a massive void there, and I'd love to see more of that happening.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I think there still is a nervousness amongst leaders about showing vulnerability, because how can I lead properly if I'm, if I'm showing vulnerability, I'm showing weakness. I know we had a good mate of yours, Chris, was on the podcast, and we were chatting about the old school SAS type. Like, I think he quoted SAS leader. Where he's like, nothing can trouble me. And just no to nowadays, where we are starting to see that people showing that vulnerability. And I like that that tip that you mentioned there, when you're in a room with your team, not asking your team to do anything that you won't be prepared to do. So I was like, right, I'll go first. Which is perfect.
Or rather than saying I'll go first, I'll ask them, would you like me to go first?
Yeah.
So rather than just because if you say I'll go first, it's almost like it's like, this is all about me. No, I'm asking if you'd like me to go first, I can go first and I can share. So it enables them to make that decision.
I like that. You've got to be careful with your word. You've got to be careful with your word, haven't you? Yeah, absolutely. So that it doesn't look like it's all you and it's about other people.
Yeah,
perfect. I've been bending your ear for a good while now, Stu. So I won't keep you too much longer. But there's one of the things that I wanted to pick up from my understanding and my knowledge base.
Yeah,
you touched on the past when we had a conversation about. I think you said there's three different types of leaders, or three different traits of leaders that you come across. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What's that? Can you shed some light on that for me?
Yeah, so this actually stems from some training I did a few years ago. So it was the agile leadership, so the CAL training, certified agile leader. It's been rebranded now. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it was done with Karim, and there's three styles of leadership that we talk about in that training, and this is something that's stuck with me ever since. And those three styles of leadership are the expert leader, so somebody that is just the best at what they do, and they just know what needs to be done in that situation, and they can just do it, and almost do it there and then, no questions asked. Right? You've got the achiever leader, which is somebody that has the knowledge, is willing to sort of share that knowledge, share the vision, this, that, and the other, ask for feedback. But maybe if that feedback doesn't necessarily align to their vision, they may be a little bit kind of, okay, thank you, but we're still going to go down this road. And then you've got the catalyst leader, which is very much more about enabling people and coaching people and that type of leadership. But the key thing to remember with those three different styles of leadership, there isn't a right and wrong. So I run workshops around this, and often the funny thing is when we bring up the different types of leaders, expert is in red, achiever is in blue, and catalyst is in green. And and actually the colors don't mean anything, but naturally somebody sees expert in red and they think, oh, that's bad. Because we associate red with bad. But it's more about understanding when and how to apply those different styles of leadership to different situations. So in the workshop that I've run previously, and I've done it with a good friend of mine, David Norshaw, we bring up different scenarios about when would this style of leadership be the most appropriate. So when would you need expert leadership? So, for example, if a building is burning and the fire brigade turn up and one of the firemen or women walk into the room, right? You don't want them to try and coach you out of the room, right? You want them to tell you exactly what you need to do to get out of that building safely. Where do I need to go? What is it I need to do? Right? Just tell me. That's what expert leadership looks like, right? And that's the absolute right type of leadership to apply in that situation. Whereas if you've got more time and actually it's more of a learning exercise, then a coaching and catalyst type leadership style would be the one you go to. So say, for example, you're just mimicking what would happen in this situation.
Yeah.
So the building's not actually on fire. We're going to pretend it's on fire. So and you could be a little bit more, okay, so what would you do in this situation then? Right. So say, for example, this door won't open. What would you do next? Versus in the actual situation, the door doesn't open. For God's sake, tell me what I need to do. Right? So it's about how and when to apply those different styles of leadership. But ultimately, it's about the traits that you then portray with those styles of leadership. So what are the great leadership traits? So we talked about trust, vulnerability, all those things. You can still use and have those traits as those different styles of, when you're applying those different styles of leadership. You don't need to be the dictator, for example, right? You can be an expert, but you don't need to be a dictator. So that's the 3 styles of leadership. And, as I say, we do some training around this, and if anybody's listening and wants sort of more insight into that, or wants to have a workshop run around this, we're happy to get in touch, and I'll happily do it. But it's about when to apply those styles and to benefit the team in the most effective way.
Perfect. So you need to really be a blend of the 3.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Yeah. You hear a lot of people going, "Oh, coaching's the best style of leadership." It is for certain situations, right? There's no point in me trying to coach somebody out of a burning building.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be sheer panic. There's going to be, people just not knowing what to do in the moment. And guess what? You're the expert in that moment. And when we see it in tech as well, right? If we've got a catastrophic failure, one of our systems goes down and we've got a catastrophic failure, we don't have time to coach people necessarily through it. We need to get the system back up. So who are the experts that can lead us on that? Right.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out afterwards. Afterwards, we'll do a playback, and we'll do a retrospective and an RCA about what went wrong, and we'll learn then. But in that moment, this isn't the time to coach people through it.
Yeah. Would you say, because the coaching aspect, someone once said to me, if you don't know, you don't know. So you can't coach somebody on something that they don't know. So in those instances, you just need to tell them. Would you go along with that? Yeah.
Yeah. Coaching isn't about you knowing or not knowing. It's helping the other person figure some stuff out, right? Yeah. It's helping them find the answers to their questions, and actually helping them find the questions before they even have the answers. Because sometimes they don't even know what the questions are, right? Yeah. So it's exploring through questioning, conversation. It's exploring that with somebody and enabling them to find out what the answers are to the questions they might not even know they had.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do find that when I coach people in an area or a topic or a discipline that I don't really have much knowledge in, it's much easier to coach somebody. Whereas if you're coaching somebody where you in an area maybe you've got a lot of experience, it's really hard not to want to pull on that experience, right? And so I find you've got to go into it and be like, well, do you know what? I don't know anything. As a coach, I don't know anything, and we're going to find this out together.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, it is. You're right. It can be quite difficult to bite your tongue and not give the answer, can't? Sometimes.
And often people confuse coaching and mentoring. Often people will be mentors. They will be sharing their experience, and they say that they're coaching people, but that's not coaching, and that's fine, right? Again, that's absolutely fine. We've got 3 different styles of educating people, right, and helping people. Like training, which is the first one, which is like just the direct approach, mentoring, and then coaching. And they all have a place. They all have a purpose, and it's picking the right time and the right topic and subject matter and problem solving to apply each of those things.
Brilliant. And finally, for anybody that is listening, the difference between the three, would you say the mentoring aspect, you're leaning on somebody who's been there and done it before, so they're basically giving you their lived experience through something?
Yeah, so they're giving you their lived experience. They'll be sharing examples. They won't necessarily be going, this is how you do it. Right. But they will be pulling on their experience. They might pair with you. They might shadow you. They might, whereas as a coach, you're trying not to influence the outcome.
Yeah.
You're trying to enable and guide the outcome in the sense of helping them get to where they need to be. But you have to go into that discussion with a very sort of clear mindset of, do you know what I mean? As a coach, if you get to a place where you don't feel like you're making progress and you do have experience, you can ask. The idea is I've got an example, or I've got a story that I could share with you that might help help you with this, but would you like to hear it versus just saying it, right? And it's not necessarily about then giving them the answer. It's about just sharing something with them that might get them to help think differently to get them to their answer.
Yeah. That's true. That's something I picked up on a couple of times from you today. The communication, the way that you communicate, the words that you use, can just by tweaking your words can give totally different impressions to people, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely can.
But that's great. So to learn, there's three different types of way of learning, and as a leader, really, you need to be blending three different styles. But that's
that's where the really strong and great leaders are, where they're able to switch between those styles in a way that exhibits the great traits that you'd want from a leader anyway, but they just apply them to those different styles. So that's what's really important.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Stu. Listen, we're well over an hour now for bending your ear, so there's some great content in there.